Utah's new offensive coordinator is Mike Bajakian. We got a chance to hear from Utah's new OC today. Also had a chance to go back and watch the film. What does Utah need to do differently? We're talking about all of that and Kyle Whittingham's comments on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network and available wherever you get your podcast. If it's your first time listening to the show, make sure you like and subscribe. We are available wherever you get your podcast as well as on YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by recruiting extraordinaire, former Utah kicker, and just pretty much the do-it-all man himself, Moose Bingham. Moose, always appreciate you stopping by. And yeah, still crazy to think we're talking about a new offensive coordinator for this University of Utah team, but Andy Ludwig stepped down. So Mike Bajakian is the guy who's going to be stepping in. We got to hear from everyone today. Whit reiterated this was fully Andy Ludwig stepping down and stepping away from the team because he just felt like, hey, they need a new voice. Like, I don't think I'll be able to fix what's going on. Totally respect him for that. And then obviously Mike Bajakian's press conference, he didn't reveal what's going to be different. I really appreciated hearing from him about how close he was with Andy Ludwig. That was something I didn't know, was that he came to Utah to learn from and be around Andy Ludwig. This is a guy who's been around the sport for a very long time. OC at Tennessee, QB coach in the NFL. He was the QB during one of Jameis Winston's wild seasons with the Buccaneers. So he's seen a lot of football, but well, overall, I really liked what I heard from Bajakian. I want to talk about in a moment what kind of things I expect to change with this Utah offense, especially after going back and watching the film. Yes, I tortured myself and decided to watch Utah's offense for a second time through for all of your enjoyment. But Moose, your reaction to everything and your initial thoughts on the offensive coordinator change.
So it's super interesting, to be honest with you. I really like Andy Ludwig, and I was super excited that he was able to stay around and not take the Notre Dame job, and that his buyout was that high. I was like, what a fortuitous turn of events for the University of Utah to have consistency in the offensive coordinator position. But maybe, I don't know that what was going on in the background. If he was able to do everything that he wanted, and if he was able to spread it out or do what he wanted, especially in Whit's system where Whit is very successful at running the ball, he's very successful at defense, and he's very successful at special teams. And it's hard to do a lot of different things that you want to do outside of that really realm of possibilities as an offensive coordinator. So Andy Ludwig, I think he did a phenomenal job. I think he was doing a great job bringing Isaac Wilson along. But Isaac Wilson is a different quarterback than Cam Rising. Some of the things that Isaac Wilson does is it's really spread out a defense. It's go at him. And I've seen him do it a lot of different times. And we even saw a phenomenal ball from him to, I believe, Money Parks.
Yep.
And he's got everything you need, but you got to let the kid loose. And I don't know if they're doing that. So I'm excited to see what Mike does. Mike is a very interesting offensive coordinator. He's had seasons where he's sitting there with, like you said, Jameis Winston. Jameis had his most successful time when he was with Mike. But he's also been able to, at Boston College, have the best rushing attack in the NCAA as well. So Mike is very good at going and understanding what his personnel are and creating an offensive scheme around that. And at times you do grow a little weary of the voices in the locker room. It's like, I've heard this speech the last 4 years. I'm not ready for this again. And it's just definitely interesting to hear. But I'm sad to see Ludwig go. I think he did so many good things for Utah from the Sugar Bowl to today. And I think that he has been a phenomenal, phenomenal part of the history of the University of Utah. And we should be thankful for the foundation that he built on the offensive side of the ball.
1000% agree with everything you said. Just because this year hasn't gone to plan doesn't mean we can ignore the highs that this Utah team reached, in large part due to Andy Ludwig's offense. So totally agree with you there. Some interesting things about Mike Bajakian. If you look at his time during Northwestern, offenses weren't crazy successful there. He averaged over the 3 seasons he was there 120th, or excuse me, where they finished at the end of the season in yards per play, 120th, 123rd, 124th. Now, I will say, there were actually a lot of things I liked about his Northwestern offense. That team last year, they had the whole Paul Fitzgerald and everything going on there. That program was supposed to be a mess. They did a lot of positive things. I believed he maximized a lot of the talent he had, especially late in the season. You look at games like the Wisconsin game, the Purdue game, and the Illinois game, the 3 games I went back and watched. That offense was actually firing on all cylinders. I'm a little surprised they made that change. They're not doing as well this year. I don't know if that's just because of the offensive change, but I do believe Bajakian can bring a lot of good things to this offense. One thing I liked about is watching what he did with Northwestern and what I expect him to do with Utah. And I think what's really important to keep in mind, and most of you know this too, you cannot make wholesale changes. This is a week. You play in a week. After that, you play in 2 weeks. Playbooks are too expansive. The foundation is placed. Mike Bajakian even reiterated that. We are not reinventing the wheel was an exact phrase that Isaac Wilson said, and I think Bajakian said something along the lines of that. There is not enough time to throw everything out and make drastic changes. So things are going to be very similar. But what things do I expect Utah to add a little bit? I think there is going to be more motion. That was something that was prevalent during his time with Northwestern. Utah motions some, but I still believe they can do so much more and really use motion to put defense in a bind more. I think a lot of what Utah does with motion is kind of just bringing guys up into the line and just add extra blockers more than anything, versus I think Bajakian will do a better job of using it to kind of try and stretch out a secondary. I really like the short routes and easy reads he gives to his quarterbacks. I think that's something that Utah needs to do more of. Play action RPO game was something we know is going to stay in this Utah, and it's prevalent everywhere in college football. Zone scheme was there last year, which is exactly what Utah does. This is why he was a fit for this program. Leave 6 to 7 guys and protect. That is key, because Isaac does not do well with pressure, and his pocket presence is just not there right now. Does a good job, like I said, using tight ends and motioning them to. There's multiple times he'll motion them in and get their momentum rolling as blockers, which I appreciated, and does lots of like just crafty routes where it's like, okay, we're going to fake short and then boom, you're going to go deep. So stop and go, things of that nature. And I do agree with what you said, Moose, that sometimes the voice may grow stale. So just when you have no answers, when you've averaged 14 points per game over the last 3 weeks, like Utah did, it feels like that's when it's time to make a change. So, Moose, I want to get your thoughts on what I said. But first, I would love to hear from you as someone who's been a college football player, been in the locker room. Like, how much can we expect to realistically change with this offense when they just have a week to make tweaks?
So a lot can change, especially when it's an offensive play caller, because the same verbiage is going to be there. The same plays will be on the sheet, but it's the order when you do the plays. It's how you're attacking the defense. It's what you're seeing. And if he believes that he can see something different than Ludwig, that's exciting to me, because we've had the player-only meetings, didn't work. I mean, there's a lot of things in there where you're like, this is normally what works for a Utah team, and it hasn't worked. So we have to find a different solution, because Utah can't continue down this trajectory. Losing 3 games isn't the end of the world. I'll be honest with you guys, the sky isn't falling. But who we lost 3 games to, that's what has the University of Utah fan base a little bit worried, because you're like, a year ago, ASU, we killed them. That's not the same ASU team because of the transfer portal. They're like, a year ago, we were able to do this. Can't do that anymore. We don't have the same guys. And it's really rearing its ugly head. And I think the biggest loss from this Utah's team was our center that went to Texas A&M. I didn't think that was going to play that big of a part in the interior blocking for this offensive line, but our tackles have done good, but our interior hasn't showed up like I expected them to with this senior heavy guys. And I think it's a lack of leadership in the interior, and it's going to be interesting because you can adjust for a guy coming off the edge. Someone through the A or B gap, good luck, Isaac Wilson. Good luck, JT Wistrcill. Good luck, anybody, because you're just not getting anywhere. And with the pressure that we've gotten on the quarterbacks, we've seen Cam Rising. He wasn't himself against Arizona, not even close. And that was kind of the end of an era, because he was really hurt in like the second series. and you just can't do anything when your knee's all jacked up, and especially when it's your throwing knee.
Yeah, that was just a really still just icky performance I look back on and just think it's wild that that's the last impression we saw of Cam Rising. It's now been a week that Cam has, like, we found out Cam's out for the season too. So what a whirlwind of a week that it's been. And we still got a lot to talk about on the show. I want to continue to talk about what's wrong with this Utah offense right now, what Coach Whittingham's comments I found interesting. And Moose, since you do such a good job breaking down recruiting, I want to talk with you as well about what all happened with Aaron Dunn last week. Utah lost out on a big commitment there. We're going to keep it rolling on this Locked On Utes in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Roy. Hey, Locked On Utes fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over 20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can directly support the athlete that you love, ensuring that all the funds go to that specific player if you choose. This is not a collective. This goes directly to the athlete that you choose to support. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going to go. You even receive exclusive contents like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm going to be supporting. Look, it was not a great performance by the University of Utah, but honestly, I think you can make an argument Keanu Tanuvasa was this team's best player for large chunks of the game. Interior pass rush did a great job getting his hands up, stuffing out the run game. Tanuvasa is the guy I'm rolling with. So I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Keanu Tanuvasa the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaways. With you can win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter that code Locked On, capital L for locked, and then you get a space between locked and then on, and there's a capital O and on. So Locked On with a space in between and just the 2 letters capitalized each word, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. Be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game with Roy. All right, Moose, as I mentioned off the top, I decided to hurt myself and go back and watch Utah's game against TCU once again. And I came away believing the biggest problem with this Utah offense is still Isaac Wilson. To me, it's just a really tough position where you have a true freshman thrown in there. Okay, I like the look. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it in a moment. Isaac's not seeing the field well to me. I'm not saying, and players aren't always open. We're going to get to some of the other issues they have, but I don't think Isaac's seeing the field well. I do not think his pocket presence is there. I think he is just really struggling out there for this Utah football team. Other players are not playing well, but Isaac's missing throws, failure to get the ball out on time is the biggest reason Utah is faltering right now.
Okay. So Cam Rising, his game is about timing and precision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes Cam so unique, because you can give him an offense and he can go out there and execute it. Isaac Wilson, he's more of a run and gun. You want to get him on the edges. You want to get him running the ball. And that's when Isaac is the most dangerous, when he's looking down the field, when he's trying to find things. If you ask Isaac to stand in the pocket and deliver the ball and there's pressure through the A and B gaps, good luck, because we've seen what's happened to Cam Rising this year without a solidified offensive line. And so that's why I'm making the faces. I'm like, I don't think it's all on Isaac, because when you're trying to do timing and there's I know it's not all on Isaac, but like it's hard to get those timing routes down when there's someone breathing down your neck, especially as a freshman. And especially because he hasn't quite grown into his body yet. He's only 18 years old. So I'm excited to see what Isaac can do in this new offense. I think it's going to be higher tempo, faster pace, and try to get guys on their heels. And I think that's what's going to make the difference, is when you can control the clock, control time, get up and down the field quick, and find guys and make the defense make mistakes, instead of just sitting there and trying to find the one-on-ones, and you're just like, they know what's coming. We know what's coming. And so I think it's going to be a little less predictable. And I'm excited to see what happens with Isaac this next week, because Isaac came here to be developed as a quarterback. And this offensive coordinator, Mike Bajakian, he's done a great job with a lot of different quarterbacks, and I think he can be phenomenal. I'm not going to like harp on him for what happened at Northwestern. Getting high academic kids to go to Chicago is a brutal ask for anybody.
Yeah.
Because the Windy City throwing there is hard. Look at all the quarterbacks at the Bears. They haven't had a 4,000-yard passer ever. And so you're looking at the same thing at Northwestern. So I'm not surprised that he didn't have a ton of offensive success there, because it's like throwing in the middle of a hurricane. It just doesn't work out. And so with Mike, I think he's going to have a lot of fun having Isaac Wilson and developing him.
It's fascinating too, because Wilson did mention, look, Bajakian, I'm trying to remember the timing of his hire. It was a good addition, but I do not remember exactly the timing of his hire. But it was after the season. Wilson committed to play for Andy Ludwig. He said as much today. So I am very curious to see how the relationship with Bajakian goes, and that we'll see how it sets Utah. And also, Bajakian is the interim. This is not his job. So he is auditioning to be Utah's next offensive coordinator, and we'll see how it goes over the next few weeks. Getting back to issues this offense has, the interior offensive line, you were absolutely right, Moose. They're not playing very well right now. We saw Tongai, it was Mokafisi actually was out of the game for a little bit, and Falcon Kalmatule was in there, but it didn't matter. The interior offensive line is very up and down. They'll have moments where it's like, Grizz is really well blocked, and then you look at another one like, what's happening on this double team block inside, or your one-on-one coverage, you have to pick up this blitz, things like that. Another group that is unfortunately not playing well right now, and this hurts to say, Utah's tight end room is not delivered. Brant Keithy pops up and will make a play through the air. He's good there. Brant Keithy is struggling as a blocker. Dallin Bentley did not have a fantastic game. Carson Ryan is still getting his feet back under him. Like the very first play of the game, I think he gets stand up. And there are also there was one play early on in this game where Mokafisi pulls, and then Carson Ryan and Brant Keithy, they all run right into each other in the backfield. Like that just can't happen at this point in the season. So there's issue with protection. Mekhi Bernard a couple times. He's really good in blitz pickup, but he also made a few mistakes there. The route structure was something Coach Whittingham said. I found that very interesting, and I do agree with that. Watching the game back, there are guys on top of each other where it's almost like one defensive back can cover both of them, and that's, to me, just a mistake you have to clean up. So you look at things like that. We already mentioned the run blocking, and obviously the penalties too. That's just something else. And guys need to do a better job getting open too, because there's times where guys aren't running good enough routes, and they're not open. There were times throughout the game, Brock Osweiler said as much, and going back through, you see it. There is nowhere to go with the football. So Wilson's the biggest problem to me, but there are other issues. And Moose, the last one I want to get your thoughts on, Andy Ludwig today, or excuse me, that's just going to take getting used to for all of us. Mike Bajakian and Isaac Wilson both said the biggest thing that Bajakian and this Utah team was preached to about on offense was improving their effort. That does send alarm bells off in my head that at this point in the season, we're hearing effort brought up. What do you think of that?
You know what? That's super alarming, because if you're not putting the effort after everything that's going on, after the coach is gone, like you might have to blow the whole thing up, to be honest with you, and bring in maybe like a Brennan Marion from UNLV, because you have $1.9 million that is available and on the table. $1.9 million is more than most, head coaches are making in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to dedicate to another guy, and you may spread the love out. But if guys aren't effort-wise, that's a cultural problem. And I don't know if it's because of the NIL. I don't know what's going on. But there's not going to be a lot of money if you're not winning at Utah. When you're winning, there's lots of money. When you're not, the well dries up pretty quick. So if these guys want to continue to enjoy those nice cars and all of the benefits for being a Utah player, you got to go to the plate, because there's a cost for being a player at Utah. And you have to deliver. And if you don't, they're going to move on relatively quick.
You're absolutely correct. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of adjustments and this team can make ahead of the game against Houston. You did a great job breaking down earlier how things can change, but it's still tough to ask in such a short time frame. So we'll see how it all goes. One thing that was crazy last week is Utah lost out on Aaron Dunn. And that's something that was, your highest rated recruit in this class, decommits, now is at USC. How did it all happen? What does it all mean? Want to get Moose's thoughts on that, as well as just the fact that we reflect on the fact that we are a week removed from Cam Rising's season-ending injury. We're breaking all that down in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our awesome friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. The World Series is set, Yankees and Dodgers, and we all hope Salt Lake gets an MLB team very soon, but it is crazy we get arguably the two most iconic franchises playing against one each other in the World Series. So you can head over to FanDuel for that. There's so many great NFL games coming up this week. Vikings versus Rams. My Vikings are still taking care of business. I'm a Vikings fan, so one of my football teams is not missing out on their expectations so far this year. So I'm going to be looking at the Vikings game. And if you're looking at Utah's a 3.5 point favorite against Houston. I still feel like this is a game. TCU loss was bad. This would even be another level worse, as Houston is viewed as one of the worst teams in Power 5 right now. So we'll see if Utah can turn around. I believe they will cover that spread. But however you're feeling and leaning, make sure you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. All right, Moose, two topics to get us out of here. The first one, Aaron Dunn, just absolutely devastating that he's not going to be coming to Utah. There's other offensive linemen here, so I want to get your thoughts on that in one moment. But I'm going to turn it over to you for both topics after I say this. The fact that this is the position this Utah team is in, no Cam Rising, we're now a week removed from the announced season-ending injury, is still just mind-numbing in a way, and I can't believe this is where Utah is. Your thoughts on both of those developments last week?
So number one, Aaron Dunn. Aaron Dunn, I think he's probably making the right choice for him. When you look at Utah's deepest position group, it might be the offensive tackles. And if you look at the youngest position group, it's probably the offensive tackles. You've got a redshirt sophomore or a redshirt freshman, a freshman that's redshirting, and a sophomore. Those are two tackles and a swing tackle. Finding reps in that group is nearly impossible. So if
Garcia
you're wanting
is the other one you're talking about, just to be clear, right? Isaiah Garcia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ike Garcia, another 4-star. So if I'm sitting there and I'm Aaron Dunn, I'm like, look, I'm not going to be able to play till like my junior year in all reality. Is it worth it? And in my mind, I'd be like, no. And then when I've got USC calling me saying, hey, we've got this NIL package and that NIL package, it's hard to say no. Do I blame the kid? No. Is this going to devastate Utah? No. They offered Nick Halleck almost immediately after, who I think is a phenomenal tackle out of Bingham that needs a little bit of development. And with Nick, his problem is he wrestles heavyweights in the offseason and he gets down to about 220 pounds at 6'5". So if Nick can get up to 300 pounds, which I believe he can, I think Nick Halleck is technical. I think he's savvy. And I think that's a great offer for Utah. And another great offer was the kicker, Dylan Curtis. I think Dylan Curtis will be a mainstay at Utah. So the sky isn't falling. We're finding those guys that have built Utah up and created the culture that they need it to be. We don't need flashy 4 stars at Utah. We've taken 3 stars and made it to the Pac-12 championship and beyond. So I'm not too worried about the development of players in this Utah system, and I want players that want to be at Utah. If you're a Ute, fantastic. Come on out, let's get you balling, and let's get you developed and get you to the NFL. If you don't want that, that's okay. We'll kick your rear next time we see you.
Yeah, very, very true. And then Moose, you're real quick. I know you wanted to mention something about Cam Rising, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to do that.
So Cam Rising, just thank you for everything you've done for the program, for everything you've been. I mean, it's sad that it ended this way, but it was a happy, happy journey. All 29 years of you. I remember when we played together, Cam. Just kidding. But still, what a phenomenal kid. And I'm just very happy that he came to Utah from Texas. He did what he did. And I think that it's been awesome to see Cam and the man he is and how he's represented Utah. And now he continues to do so. He's still helping Isaac. He doesn't have to do that. I've been on teams where the quarterback gets hurt, doesn't show up to the facility ever. And Cam has been just a mature teammate, does great, and I hope he gets a chance to play on Sundays as well.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Got to get healthy, but we'll see what happens. But Moose, the man, the myth, the legend, thank you for joining me. He's the president of War Room, the CEO of Recruiting for Parents, the host of the Utah Preps podcast, a color analyst for KSL Sports, a kicking coach, and most importantly, Kirsten's husband. I read all that off his X profile, so I didn't miss anything. Moose, thanks for stopping by.
Always a pleasure, JT. Have a great one and go Utes.
You as well. Go Utes. We'll be back tomorrow breaking it all down. That's going to do it for our show today.